Gamechangers podcast, inspiring leaders of tomorrow.
Hey guys, welcome back to Gamechangers podcast. This is our Mentor Series, and today we have a very old friend of mine and a great human being, Anthony Zorzetto. Welcome on the podcast, Anthony. Good to have you back.
Thanks. Happy to be back. This is great.
Yeah, and for people that don't know, I'm saying back, but because we actually did record a podcast with Anthony a few years ago, but because of technical issues, we could never get that out. So I'm really happy that, we found the opportunity to have you on again. And, I feel like even that the last episode we did together, you had so much to offer, and I got to learn so much from you. So I'm really glad that we're going to be able to share that again.
Awesome. Likewise.
Yeah. And for people that don't know, Anthony is the founder of Anvil Construction. And his story is, I guess in brief words, homeless to millionaire, right? And we'll delve deeper into that as we go through the podcast. But even now, I want to start off with a lot of the awareness that you're creating with, I know you've been doing a lot of work you did 215 laps for every single grave that was found in Kamloops. And, you spent 12 hours just the whole day just doing those laps just to create awareness. Tell us a little bit more about your thought process into that.
Sure. So actually, it took me a little bit longer. It took me closer to, I think it was like 14 or 15 hours to do it. But wow. When I saw it on the news, I saw that there's 215 graves found. It's obviously super tragic. And then I heard that there was some 3-year-olds there. Children as young as 3 years old, and that's how old my son is. And that's when it really started to affect my heart, really. So I decided I wanted to do something and do not just a donation, because it's so super easy for anybody to just click a button and donate. I'd rather just bring awareness by donating time, volunteering time, and doing something difficult. And I don't think people could really realize how much 215 actually is. Like you hear that number and you're like, it's kind of in the like, holy shit mark, like, wow, 215 graves. That's wild. But if you laid out 215 shoes or 215 anything, it's a long line. So in order to show the scale of what 215 actually is, I decided to do a hill close to my house, which is 440 feet long. 440 feet up, 440 feet down. And it's a very wide hill. So given the COVID restrictions and everything like that, we could safely get volunteers to come join me without AHS getting mad. So yeah, that's what we did. I started at 6 a.m. and went until it was done. And we had, 45 to 50 people show up throughout the day, come do 1 or 2, some did 10. Some did 30, had a couple do 50 with me, and they brought granola bars and bagels and donuts and water and Gatorade and all that kind of stuff so that I could be successful for the day. And it worked out really good because we had several Métis and Cree folks come out and join me. And it was eye-opening to hear their stories. As we were climbing the hill, they were talking to me about how their mom and dad they were in a residential school, or their grandparents were in a residential school, and listening to how horrible it was. I never really paid any mind to it, to be completely honest. I was ignorant to what it was. I really had no idea what it was.
And, they just started teaching in school. So like there's no way that you would have known even.
Yeah, I had no idea. And at first, when I heard residential school, all I thought about was, I assumed that it was people that didn't have families, that got adopted by these families to go into the residential school system. I was completely ignorant to it. I had no idea. And like I said, hearing that there was 3-year-olds, I looked at my son, and then I looked at the door at my house, and I thought, that's no different than if the government created a police force to come into my house and take my son away and say, we're taking your son away because you don't know how to parent, and we need him to be incorporated into today's society. So that really struck a chord with me. And that's the reason why I did it. It all started right there with that thought.
Mm. And major respects for you, to you for doing that, because I think, a lot of the time how society is working these days is you just post a story on your Instagram and then you forget about it. And I have so much respect for you for actually taking action for yourself and for your family, because, you want to be known. You said you have a son of your own, and, that I think that really hit a chord with you. And, it's amazing that you did that. I saw it all over social media as well. People were joining. A lot of my friends that I know were there as well. And, yeah, it's insane how you were able to do that, because 14, 15 hours is not a joke to run up and down. And yeah, that's astounding. And I mean, it's kind of developed into, there's more and more stories coming out. You're talking about these stories that people are sharing. Now there's 751 unmarked graves found in Saskatchewan. So I mean, yep. And like where where do we go from here? And even for me, like I'm someone who I think is not that knowledgeable on this topic, and I'm learning more and more as awareness is being created, and I'm finding out more. And they do teach us a little bit about it in school, but now we're really finding out what happened in terms of the open truth. So I mean, yeah. What are your thoughts? Like where do we go from here with all this information? Like what's the future looking like for everyone?
You know what? I think now that we're finding all these graves and we have social media and everything's getting shared, we're getting a lot of information. So I think the main thing, or one of the main goals and objectives would be to keep spreading awareness and showing that this happened. And we're not, as in Canada, we're not sinless to this. And obviously trying to rally the troops to get some donations together to donate to these residential school survivors and make sure they have the tools and resources they need to continue, because this doesn't just happen to a generation. This is generational. So, growing up without parents, that's really difficult. That's almost an impossibility to be incorporated into the society as a normal, quote unquote, functioning human being that contributes and gets a job and pays taxes and is respectful, and you know what I mean? The more that people know that this happened, the more we're able to, gather the funds and the resources needed to help out. And I think the helping out comes in many forms, such as education. I think is one of the biggest things. Obviously, money is a big deal, because without money, you don't have very many resources. There's so many hugs you can give out, but money can, build schools, help curriculums, like help people get into curriculums and the books they need and the school supplies and all that kind of stuff. And we can, talk about the fresh water. They don't have fresh water in a lot of the reserves. And a lot of it too comes with a massive stigma. I know maybe we could start breaking that stigma and educating the people that had no idea that this happened.
Yeah. One thing with the fresh water that I think it's like insane is I was taking this like Harvard course a year ago, like those free ones, because I had time to kill. And it was like economics on cities. And it said that when we developed our freshwater sources, that's when it extended our lifetime as a human race from like 40 to like close to 80. And that's insane. Like you can't live without fresh water. And it's insane that some place in North America and a developed country doesn't have fresh water for its people. It's like insane. Yeah,
it's unacceptable is what it is. And it's tragic. You take it for granted, right? Like growing up, I had access to, everything, fresh water, food, everything. I never really had to think about it. And now that you get older and you start thinking about these things, especially because I have a son, like if my son didn't know where his next meal was from, or if he was going to get fresh water or not, that's a stress that no child should have to go through. They should be stressing about other things, innocent things, not living or dying. It's not okay, especially in Canada.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's all really tragic what's happening, but it's like you said, it's good that, at least this is causing a lot of awareness, and with social media, there's a lot of truth being shared openly. And hopefully, people that are watching, they do find an opportunity to donate, do their part, and contribute to these other causes like freshwater and, just helping these families that have suffered for so long. But from there, I do want to kind of shift to you, Anthony, because I know you have an amazing story of yourself, right? We mentioned earlier at the start of the podcast, homeless to millionaire, and it's literally true, and I want to start off with the initial part because everyone knows, you're founder of Anvil Construction. And I mean, tell us a little bit about how, I guess, how successful your company and organization has been now, because I want to bring that up before we go into your startings and your troubles, so it shows perspective of where you can be.
Sure. Yeah. So now we're when I first started ANVO, we were doing really small jobs. Now we're building buildings downtown, renovating buildings downtown, and strip malls, car dealerships, all that kind of stuff from the ground up, as well as the retrofits, like I mentioned. We're doing a historical building downtown right now. We're gutting it completely and transforming it into a large restaurant, big chain. It's been really good and kind of like a new world. Well, not like a new world, but mostly looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I'm here from where I used to be. Like my first job with Anvil Construction is a 200 square foot laminate job. I think it paid me $300. So now when we're sending out invoices, they're $1 million plus. So it's been amazing. It's been great and a passion of mine for sure. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you're pretty humble about it. You haven't, you're playing it down, but I know these guys are doing crazy amounts of business, and even yourself, you've done very well for yourself financially, and even the organization you've built, the team that you've built, and you have a beautiful family now. And I mean, that's all great, but I want to go back, track back a few years, and the start of, before, you started this transformation, the troubled period you went through, which has led to you now doing motivational speaking on drug abuse and mental health and all these other challenges people are facing. I mean, where do you start? What happened at the beginning?
Well, just kind of like most people that grew up the way I did. So I grew up in a small town outside of Edmonton, Beaumont. My parents split up when I was in grade 5 going into grade 6. And then we moved to the city, and there's some trauma that comes with divorce, but it's not, I kind of downplay it as much as I can, because that's really not much compared to what else is going on in the world, especially when you consider places like Yemen and war-stricken places and stuff like that. And I really think about that. So I just try to keep the trauma virtue signaling to a minimum, because there's lots worse things going on. But I started off where should I start here? Okay, so I started working for a large company when I finished high school. I got my apprenticeship as a carpenter. I became a journeyman carpenter relatively young. I think I was one of the youngest guys in my company to get his journeyman as a carpenter. I saved up to buy my condo, and the way I did that is I was working while I was going through school. I was doing all these side jobs. So I was building decks and fences and minor kitchen renovations, roofing, attic insulation, all that kind of stuff on top of my schoolwork. And when I finished, I continued my carpentry. But I started to notice that on the weekends, I would go out just like everybody else, especially in the trades. A lot of people would go out on the weekends and just get blackout drunk and just, live for the weekend and reward yourself for a hard week. So instead of doing that, I recognized it early that I wasn't able to just have 1 or 2 beers. I'd have to have like a dozen. I'd have to get drunk. So I was always fiscally responsible, in my early 20s. So instead of going out to the bars. I decided to work at the bars because I'm an extrovert. I needed to be out and stuff like that. So I started working at the bars instead, and I saved all this money to buy my first condo. And I was kind of the, first one in my family to buy a condo. I was 20. I was, living it up. I had a bunch of friends and success, and I was really in a good place. And just one birthday party, and my buddy's birthday party, I was introduced to cocaine. And it was one of those things that you keep hearing. I did one line, and the second it went up my nose, I was like, I'm hooked on this. Not hooked in a way where I'm going to give up my whole life to pursue this drug, but just that feeling of endorphins and dopamine that got pumped through me. I knew that it was like that. And I'm like, this is my shit. I've always liked adrenaline and high paced things. And that's exactly what that did. So
you do have a bit of an addictive personality as well, right? Like you said this before.
Oh
well.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. It's not just a bit. Yeah. It's, I've toned it down a little bit, but I've more so used it to my advantage now. I can kind of tool into things that are healthy. So yeah, it all kind of started there, and it's turned into a weekend habit. And then it turned into the Friday night and the Saturday night. And then it turned into, I don't know if you remember Ranch Wednesdays. We'd go to the ranch at this nightclub here, at this bar here, this country bar here. We would go there.
It's closed now, but yeah.
Yeah, it's called the
Tavern.
It's like it's kind of like Greta downtown, but it's something else. That's gonna kill me. But it's arcade games and stuff like that.
Yeah. Oh, Beercade, is that what it is?
No, Beercade's another one. That's White Ave.
There's so many new places now.
I think it's the Midway one.
Midway. That's right. Thank you. Yes, Midway. So.
But like it's a different demographic now, like even like a younger demographic.
Yeah, exactly. So back when it was the ranch, it was like $1 for a highball or something like that. So we would go party on Wednesday, and then they would spill into Thursday, and then it's like, okay, now it's Friday night, so let's go get fucked up Friday night, and then it's okay, let's Saturday night. That's the one where you really pop off, and then it started turning into like Taco Tuesday, Wing Wednesday. There's a, Tankard Thursdays and whatever. If you could put a name to it, we would celebrate it. And the drugs started trickling in on those days as well. So that started happening, and I started to get comfortable with being high, and I'd see it out. And at the time I was married, and I had my first business venture. And that started to fail. Both started to fail, the marriage and the company, because a couple of reasons. First of all, I wasn't getting paid on a lot of these jobs. I got taken advantage of because in construction, being in your young 20s, like you're a baby. Construction owners, they're typically older because it's such a long game. You don't just do construction. You have to learn construction.
Yeah. So and it's a super traditionally like built business,
Yeah, that's right. It's ground up, build your relationships. You have to get your foot in the door to really network, and then the experience is utmost importance. So, I was very behind on accounts receivable, and I just kind of like gave up because I was chasing all these people, and I didn't have money for a lawyer. 3 big, large jobs didn't pay off for me. So that started to sewer. And then I started to cope by drinking and just kind of getting blasted and doing cocaine. So I would be in a different realm of world. So I didn't have to think about all the debt I was incurring, and I didn't have to face reality. Really, it was just a big escape for me. And eventually the marriage fizzled out. My company went under, and before I knew it, I had about 15 cents to my name, and I just couldn't go forward anymore. But I also tried to get a job. I couldn't hold a job because I started to become addicted to cocaine. I wasn't doing it partying anymore. I was just doing it to cope. So I started doing, I lost my house. I lost my truck. I lost my health and my friends, and respect for myself, respect from others. And I was hiding it from my family. And, before you know it, I was on the street. So, doing these little side jobs to get some cash, and it was just to feed my cocaine addiction. So it went.
It's expensive.
Yeah, it's very expensive.
Yeah. Like, how much does it cost, like, on a daily basis?
Well, the thing about using cocaine every day is your tolerance goes up. So, a gram is about $60 to $100, depending on the quality and where you are. So I was doing, my habit was about $250 a day.
Jeez.
So
Crazy.
Yeah. So
you're earning, basically, you work 8 hours, all the money that you earn or whatever, then it all just goes to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And people also they don't take into account the fact that when you get that $250 from doing a side job or whatever, you lose 2 days because of the hangover and coming down and you're high and you can't think. And as a carpenter, you can't read a tape measure if you're fucked up. So you have to call in sick or let a client down, and that snowballs. And then you get this anxiety. You're like, oh my God, I let this client down. I let this person down. I let my friend down, that someone gave me an opportunity to work with them. And I had to call in and say, I don't feel good. And you're constantly lying. You're constantly letting people down on top of coming down off of drugs. It's just a crippling depression that is unexplainable to anyone who hasn't gone through it. It's something that you could never really compare anything to. Yeah. So, pardon me?
At that point, you never got help from anyone, like in your family or anybody?
No, I never reached out. Because I was kind of the tough one in the family, and I was the first one to, get their journeyman ticket and get a condo and, buy a truck and have a respectful job and all that kind of stuff. I was kind of the leader in that sense. And I was very proud of what I portrayed and what I was able to accomplish. So I was just too afraid to approach my family. Not that they would be mad. Maybe they'd be upset. And, hindsight's 2020. I know they would help me now, but I just didn't want to be a disappointment. And, that's all I knew at that time. I would just disappoint myself and everybody around me every day, every minute of the day. So I didn't want anything further. So I would rather just be homeless than disappoint them. And remember too, cocaine consumes your body and your brain. It actually, the reason it's a disease is it tells your brain to fire different neurons, and it hijacks your biochemistry. So you get these fake endorphins and dopamine, and you just seek that out. That's all you care about, because or else you get sick. Like your body, that's all it wants.
So what does it feel like? I mean, what's the experience, and why is it so addicting?
Well, it hijacks your endorphins and dopamine. So endorphins that's what happens after you do a job well done. So you put in, let's say you're painting your bedroom or something like that. You finish painting your bedroom and you stand back and you look and you're like, I did that. That feeling of accomplishment, that's endorphins. Yeah. Or after you work out to failure or work out, you're whatever, you just go, you're
when you work out to failure, or after like a 12, 13 hour day at work, like you're like, oh my gosh. So I can see.
You're like, my job is done and I earned this. I did this. I accomplished this. So that feeling, imagine getting that feeling, but you get it like this. You just do one line and you get it in the snap of a finger. So what's easier? Right. And on top of that, it feels good. The first couple lines feel really good, really good. And you chase that dragon. That's that saying, you chase the dragon it applies to just that. You want that first feeling of euphoria, and you never really get it, but you lie to yourself and think you can. So,
but some people say like, oh, it's not addicting, or just do it one time, or like, I guess, what's your response to that?
Yeah, they're lying. I've met one person in my life that has like a disassociation with it. They could do like 1 or 2 lines a year or something like that. you know, Christmas or New Year's Eve or, you know, Halloween party or whatever it is, they can do a couple lines. I've only met one person that can do that. Mm-hmm. Everybody else, you know, if they say they can do just a few, like typically they're lying in my experience. Like there's just no way. Or they have another demon. Their drug of choice is something else, or they're addicted to sex or porn or, you know, whatever it is, there's usually something else to that story in my experience. So,
right.
Yeah. Those people typically are, you know, full of shit.
So, I mean, going from there, I want to ask you, so you said from there, you kind of ended up being homeless and almost penniless. So, I mean, what was that experience like? Just like, what did you do like to get by day to day? Like, where'd you get your food from and all those things?
Yeah, it was awful. So, typically what I would do, I'd go to the Save on Food near the house that I had or used to have after it got taken away. And I would go to the self-checkout. I'd walk into the self-checkout. I'd grab a couple grocery bags, plastic bags. And then I would go get like things that are easy to eat right away. So packaged things like Oreos or chunky soup or pre-packaged anything, a lot of protein bars or whatever. I would grab those, put them in a bag, and I'd walk out like I paid. And I wouldn't feel bad because it's really hard to explain, but you're not yourself. It's, you know, you're this other version, this lesser version, this like gross, caustic version of yourself. So you don't really care that you didn't pay and you got to eat. So you kind of put yourself into the zone of you got to do what you got to do. And so you go do it. So that's how I would get my food. And basically my day to day was just trying to figure out how I can find $100 to $250 to it so I could, you know, feed my cocaine addiction. And then I would just go back to this wooded area near my house and I would sleep outside. I would just sleep there in this little makeshift tent. And I am a carpenter after all, so I can kind of build, right? So I'd make this kind of decent camp and I would just live there and eat my cold, chunky soup and whatever my teeth could handle, because my teeth started to rot out and stuff like that. Because that's what happens. Because you ingest the cocaine through your nose and you get the drips, and then the acetone eats away at your teeth enamel, and you're not brushing your teeth because you don't give a fuck about that. All you care about is getting high.
Yeah.
So that was really the day to day, man. It was just going to get food.
How long
and
did that last for?
I was outside, like literally just like that for about 9 or 10 months.
Jeez.
Yeah. And in Edmonton, that sucks, man. It gets really cold.
Oh my God. I can't even imagine like the winters. Like, I mean, how did you get by in the winters? Like, I
would just have my work gear. I still save some things. So I had these Baffin boots that were good to -50. So I would always wear those and wool socks and I would just layer up, and then I would go to the 7-Eleven near my house and just kind of pretend I was shopping for something and just warm up a little bit. And I'd go to a friend's house, but at the very beginning, when I didn't look so distraught and fucked up, I would go to a couple friends' house and, say like, let's have a couple beers at the hot tub or whatever. And I'd spend a couple nights there and go to another friend's, and just try to make it seem like I wanted to hang out, but really I was just trying to get warm.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, so from there, I mean, that's like the low point and really, really the lowest point. But after that, after those 9-10 months, like what was the turning point for you? I guess what changed?
Well, basically the stars aligned, really. I had run out of ways to find money and get money. And to put it into perspective, I'm 190 pounds right now and kind of like very low body fat. I'm very into bodybuilding and jiu-jitsu and stuff. And so, yeah, about 190 pounds. Back then I was 145, 150. So I turned into like a skeleton. So if you hadn't seen me for about a year, you wouldn't even recognize me, barely. And what had happened was I had 3 or 4 days without getting my drug, which means you start getting your brain back. You start getting your drive, even your like like, yo, what am I doing? You're looking around, I'm under a tarp and it's fucking freezing out. And like, what am I doing? How did I get here? I used to be this successful guy. In my early 20s, I bought a condo, I bought a house, I bought a truck, I bought a cash. My first truck, I bought cash. You know what I mean? Like, it's always into my fitness. I had a bunch of friends. I was always working. And what happened? Where did my drive go? I don't give a fuck about anything else except for drugs now. What happened? And you kind of are able to stop and reflect and think about these things. And it just so happened I ran into an old friend of mine who was actually just he was a plumber on some of my job sites. And he had this buddy that he's kind of this eclectic dude that did all these like little side jobs and stuff like that. And he's this Christian guy that had wicked energy, like 12 out of 10 energy. I've never seen anyone like that. And he ran into me and with my other friend who is a plumber, and he's like, Anthony? And I was like, yeah, man. He's like, what the fuck? He's not shy. He's not shy to ask. Like, what the fuck happened to you? What, like, you're 140 pounds. Like, what happened? And then for whatever reason, man, I had nothing to lose, and I was very vulnerable, and I felt comfortable talking to him for whatever reason. And I said, listen, man, I got addicted to cocaine, and this is what happened. And, my marriage fizzled out, and I lost my business. I lost my house. I lost my self-respect. Can't talk to my family. And, I just kind of broke down and told him the truth. And him as a Christian said, you know what, man, get in my truck. And we're going to go to Chris's house, a buddy of mine still to this day, and get you some food, and we're going to hang out and see what's up. And you could see the worry in both. His name is Dan. You can see the worry in Dan's eyes, and you can see the worry in Chris's eyes. Like, man, this guy, both these guys used to kind of look up to me as an entrepreneur. And they're like, what happened? So we were able to sit down and have this really empathetic, detailed conversation. And I was able to just let it all out and break down and, cry and just tell them the truth. And I instantly felt good, and I instantly felt comfortable with them. And they said, we want to help you. So what can we do? And I said, well, I don't want help, because I was stubborn still for some reason. But I said, what we can do is say, Chris, you're a plumber. Dan, you're a tile setter. Anthony, I'm a carpenter. Maybe we can help each other out on our side jobs, because everybody did side jobs. So that's what we did. Dan had a couple of jobs that needed a carpenter. So I did some carpentry for him. I used all his tools because I hawked all mine for drugs. And, I was able to feel comfortable with doing that, because I didn't feel like a leech, like a low life, and, like a typical junkie. So it was a win-win-win situation. And once I started to get a couple of days clean, 5 to 7, then you get, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you start becoming more and more yourself. And I was able to open up to them and be honest and say, hey, man, like, when we get paid for this work, you can't give me any cash, because I'm just going to go do drugs. So that's what happened. I just stayed away from the debit card, and I didn't see any cash, and we were just able to just go out and get some beers and go to brew house and just develop this camaraderie. And, it's not very good in an addictive side of things. You're not supposed to go out and drink. But for whatever reason, for me, going out and drinking, I was able to become vulnerable and talk to these guys about what's really going on in my life and my brain and how I think. And, we just kind of just flourished into really good friends, and they just had my back. And after to make a long story short, before I knew it, I was myself again. Once I became myself, I was able to start a business with Dan and really, put my nose to the grindstone and go, because I have unmatchable work ethic still to this day. And so did Dan, for sure. So that's kind of how I got clean. It's just that sense of purpose and working yourself so much that you didn't have time to think about anything else. And of course I've had multiple relapses, because, we'd be like, hey, Anthony, you can have your own money. So I'd have like $500 from a job we did.
Yeah.
And then I would go right into buying drugs, because that's what your brain does. It's just, I wasn't fully developed again yet. So, but it, over time, and, it took a couple of years to get to the point where I wasn't going to do drugs anymore. It's a long road, and it's a tough battle for the people that help you. So if you're, anyone who's listening, if you got a family member, a friend, or anything like that, and you want to really tangibly help them get out of drug addiction, I mean, really help them, you're in for a fucking marathon, a hard one. You know what I mean? So kudos to them for helping me out. And
those are some, I feel like you're blessed to have friends like that, because for someone to put up with all that and, put in so much time and energy to help you get through an obstacle like that. It's rare to find people like that in your life.
Yeah, it's no small feat, and that's a true friend. And if you really want to, let me reword that. If you consider what I went through and put myself through, I don't like to say I went through it. I put myself through it. The amount of people that just kind of ghost you and don't help you out, you really get to see who your friends are, who's really going to put in the work. And, you don't really forget that. But at the same time, you don't have to put up with that. Like if you have a friend that becomes an addict and you've tried everything you can within your wheelhouse and within your mental health capacity, you cannot be blamed for letting them go. There's only so many times you can be lied to and taken advantage of and stuff like that. But if you got a brother or someone you consider a brother, you go in for it. And that's what they did for me.
Okay.
So that's exactly why my Instagram looks the way it does. Like sitting in those bushes and thinking about it, there's no way I can get out of this. Like I had 2 suicide attempts, one of which was almost a physical impossibility for me to live. And I lived. And after, not right after that, but thinking back to those moments, I'm like, I got to give back. So that the best way I can do it with being able to grow my businesses and be a good father and a good partner to my girlfriend, the best way to do it is to just tailor my Instagram to the way it is. I would love to take in all these people and help them the way that I was helped, but it's just not scalable, and I have to look after my family. So the best way to do it is through Instagram and just showing my life lessons and how I got out of it and how I got through it, and breaking the stigma within stigmas. Like there's a lot of unpopular opinions that I have within the addiction community that I talk about. Like, for example, being sober is good enough. A lot of people will say that. And I argue it's not good enough. It's good enough at a certain time, for sure. So, being sober is good enough for a while, but then after that, you have to move on. I go to these groups. I used to go to group and I'd look around. I'm like, these guys are all fucking victims. They just stay here. They stay at this level. And that's not for me. Yeah. If you're a heroin addict or a crack addict and your goal is getting sober, that is good enough. That is good enough. But once you get sober, what are you going to do then? You're just going to just work every day on just being sober and that's it? The fuck kind of life is that? I think it's unacceptable. So the way you look at it, the way I look at it is I look at it as a giant ladder, and the rung of sobriety should be like number 5 out of 30. So get sober. Okay. Now move on. Now maybe try to start a business, or try to move up the corporate ladder, or try to do something you're passionate about and monetize it. Try to become the best dad you could be. Try to become a hockey coach for your kid. Try to, you know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
You're finding more activities, like being sober. It's like, it's a challenge and it's progress. But again, like you said, like after one point, you have to find more activities and more, something to bring purpose to your life, right? You got to find meaning.
Yeah, that's right. If your goal and objective is just to become sober, you have you have something different to accomplish. You have to find a way so that it's second nature. You can't just rely on discipline to get you through not doing drugs and not drinking alcohol, because it won't work. Yeah. There's a saying, if you take laxative, you can't willpower yourself not to shit yourself. You can't do it. You cannot rely on discipline in that sense, right? So you have to find something that works for you. And, to be honest, the thing that worked for me the most, besides finding purpose is number one. But I did this psilocybin trip, and I gave myself like a guided meditation so that I could dissociate myself with drugs and why I was doing it. And I found out that, so just to kind of paint the picture for you guys, I did this hero dose. So I think I did about 5 grams, which I don't know if you guys have ever done psilocybin, but that's a fucking lot. You're in another dimension when you do that. But as I was coming down, I went for a run. I actually randomly ran like 20 kilometers. And while I was going through this kind of forest wooded area, there was this windy path. And the windy path was shaded because the evergreen trees were massive. And I was going through this winded path, and I can kind of see the very end, there's daylight. And it was about, 10 in the morning or whatever it was. There was daylight. It was a hot day. And the windy path was showing me these evergreen trees. And the branches, you get a tree trunk for about 4 feet, 3 feet, and then branches start. So I thought to myself, I'm like, maybe what I'm doing is, instead of going through the path of shadow and darkness and scariness, what I do is I go to these tree burrows, I call them, and I hang on to the tree because I'm familiar with it. I'm familiar with this tree. Okay, this is a tree. I'm going to hold on to this, because if I stay on this path, maybe this demon will come get me, or something I don't know will come get me, because I can't clearly see the objective. So I would just hang out there, and that would be a cocaine addiction. I would hang out a cocaine addiction because I knew it. You get money, you buy cocaine, you deal with your pain, you calm down, rinse and repeat. Or I would go to this other tree and be like, okay, if I get blackout drunk, I don't have to face what happened to me as a child, or as a victim of divorce, or I lost my company, or poor me, or whatever. I would just hang out this tree. And then as I was walking, I'm like, okay, this is what I did. This is my traumas as a childhood. In my childhood, this is my traumas as a cocaine addict. This is my traumas being homeless. This is my traumas as my grandpa said something to me one time, or my uncle, or whatever. I recognized all these tree burrows as just this familiarity of peace. And I didn't want that anymore. I just kept walking. Finally, and you can't, it's hard to explain without going through a psilocybin trip, but I got to the last tree, and there was this shadow that was casted, and it looked like a starting line. And I stopped while I was in the shadow, and I put my hands up, and I was like, okay, this is it. This is the last time I do any sort of drug or anything. And I jumped past it, and the warmth of the sun was cast onto my face and my body. And I felt like that was it. And it wasn't at that moment where I realized that being sober wasn't my end all be all. I was built for greatness and built for something else. And I implore people to find doesn't necessarily have to be through psilocybin, but I implore people to find their purpose and their meaning and their drive, and figure out what makes them tick and what can be the next thing, whether that's being a guidance counselor, or starting a podcast like you guys, or starting a multi-million-dollar business, or becoming a life coach, or whatever it may be. If you find your purpose, you'll never go a day of your life without having that purpose. That's yours. No one can take that away from you. Being sober is not a purpose that I wanted to just stay in. It wasn't good enough for me.
Yeah. And I feel like you're less likely to go back because you have people relying on you, and you can take more like pride in yourself because you understand like what you're here to do,
That's right. If you realize why you're put on this earth and what your sense of purpose is, you can't go wrong. And I'm not saying that's 100% perfect every time. Of course, anyone listening, if you relapse or you've had a drink when you said you weren't going to, it doesn't mean you start at ground zero. All the work you did before is not for nothing. You just pick up and carry on.
I also want to quickly touch on, if you don't mind, I know it's Men's Mental Health Month, and we just did an episode, me and Jaden, last week we did one and we put that out there. And I mean, I think you've had your fair share of mental health issues, and I know you have that suicide story. If if you would like to share, I think it can maybe give some perspective if you're comfortable sharing that that you went through.
About the suicide?
Yeah,
no problem. So back then I still had my condo, and I made myself a deal, and I said, okay, if I had some cocaine left over from the night before because I passed out, and I said, if I can sit here and not do it, then I'll be okay. But if I can't and I have to do it, then I'm fucked. And there's no way I'm going to get any better. So it lasted about probably under 10 seconds, to be honest. And I did some. So I was like, that's it. Like, there's no way out of this. Like, I've let my family down. I let myself down. I've let all my friends down. I've let everybody down, including like everybody, just let everybody down. So I decided at that moment, I'm going to kill myself. There's no way out of this. It's impossible. And try to remember too, when you're a cocaine addict, your brain is not your brain. It's just kind of rented. So I waited for my family to go on their yearly Hawaii trip, which I was supposed to go to. And I lied and said that I lost my passport. But really my whole plan was to kill myself while they were in Hawaii, because I thought it was like a respectful move, and I was being courteous, so that when they found out the news that I had killed myself, at least they're in Hawaii in a nice place. So like, I thought that was a good idea. Like that's how fucked up my brain was.
Right.
So yeah, I waited for them to go to Hawaii, and I bought, I think it was a half of an ounce of cocaine. I bought some sleeping pills, and I bought a 2.6 of Jack Daniel's whiskey. And I did most of it, thinking that I would OD. And I almost did. I went into a fit, and I remember seeing this kind of figure by this door that I had. And that's where I would kind of tweak out. I would go to this place next to my sliding door, because that's where I thought either the cops or the drug dealers or whoever is going to break in and kill me or take me away or whatever. And so that one spot had like a bad energy about it. Anyways, I kind of was coming out of my fit, and I remember not being able to breathe. And I looked, and there was this kind of figure, not like a human figure, but like this light that was emanating from there, or illuminating from there rather. And it just gave me this warmth of, release. And it was like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? You have a family, you have purpose, you're destined for great things. Why are you killing yourself? And, you look at these other stories where, the guy that jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and he ended up living. He said the first thing he thought of when he jumped was instant regret. Not regret because, oh my God, this is going to hurt. It was, what am I doing? I have a life. I have people in my life. I have a purpose. And that's kind of the message I got out of that was, I'm here for a reason, and killing myself is only going to just hurt the people around me. And that's kind of what happened. I straightened out after that for a few days, but drugs are so powerful that, I used again. I think I used again the next day, but I didn't want to kill myself. So it was kind of like a progress, if you will. If you could find a little bit of progress, that was a progress. At least I didn't want to kill myself anymore. So yeah, it's, if I could say anything about suicide, it's that you matter, and there's somebody looking up to you that you don't even know. You know what I mean? I get messages, fairly frequently, people I've never met before, and they just say like, hey, just wanted to let you know that your post about suicide awareness, or your post about being vulnerable and showing your 12 steps and how you went through the 12 steps, it really helped me, or really helped my brother, or I had courage to check myself into rehab. Like, you never know who's looking up to you. It could be your little brother. It could be your little cousin. It could be your mom. You never know. So my message would be that you matter, and you do make a difference. And all you got to do is work a little bit on yourself, little increments every day, and you'll get better. You will get better. And also, to the people that say suicide is selfish, the act is itself. You can understand how that looks selfish. I understand that, and I empathize with that. But the person who wants to commit suicide, what they are thinking is that they are taking the burden of themselves off of you. They think that they're actually being selfless. They're not like, I'm going to kill myself so that maybe I can turn into a ghost and see who's at my funeral, and I'm getting all this attention. No one's thinking that. What they're thinking is they're going to rid the world of their burden.
Yeah. They think of themselves as so low and so small and invaluable that they think, and actually, and not even invaluable, like as in, like their presence in this world, is, like without their presence in the world would be a better place. That's basically what the mindset is like, I think.
Yeah, you nailed it. I think that's what goes through many people before they commit suicide. And some people are suffering. There's mental illness is real. That's real. Big time real. And a lot of people are suffering so much they don't think they can get better. And I think there's the stigma is starting to raise, as in lift and become less and less stigmatized. And I would just implore people to just find help, try to find help, start somewhere and talk to someone. There's 1-800 numbers, and these people they'll talk to you and they'll guide you in the right direction. You just start. You have to just start. And I don't mean to say just start. That may be climbing Mount Everest to somebody. We don't know, but the tools are there.
Right. I mean, that's thanks for sharing your story. I know it's not easy, but I mean, I hope somebody who's listening was able to gain some insight on, like you said, it's not about, I'm just gonna turn my life around. It's just about that first small step that you need to take, and that could be your starting point, whatever it is. And I mean, even for you, ODing was actually that step, or like even doing drugs, but not with the intention to, commit suicide. That was the step for you. Even it could be the smallest thing, but, find whatever it is for you. And, as we do come towards a close for podcast, I mean, do you have any thoughts you want to share out to people that are struggling with mental health or maybe suicidal thoughts or other mental health issues?
Yes, absolutely. I want to say that, just to reiterate, I was at the lowest of the lows in my mind. I literally thought I could not get better. Just as you and I are talking, and just as you can take a fresh air and breathe, as much as you know that your next breath is guaranteed, I did not think I could get better. I thought it was a physical and mental impossibility. But I did get better. And I am where I am now because I got help and I asked for help. So people who think that there's no out and there's no way, there's no physical way, it's impossible. Oh, but you don't know my story, bro. I'm different. I actually can't get out. This is impossible. Listen, you can get out. Absolutely. 100% you can get out. It varies person to person, but you can get out. And it all starts with little, small, micro adjustments. And most of that is asking for help. There's nothing wrong with that ever.
Yeah. And, one of the biggest takeaways I've learned from this entire conversation is also how, drug use is often played down, and it's kind of generalized and normalized by some people. And it's so important that you're careful that who you surround yourself with, because some of these people, you never know in a moment of weakness where you might be influenced to do something that doesn't align with your values and who you want to be. And also just, being lied to, like you said, that, it's just one time, like, I've done it all the time and like, I'm not addicted, or they'll tell you lies and you really don't know, how it will be. So always remember, like, especially any sort of drug use, especially when you're talking about, cocaine or heroin or crack, like there's no exception. Like if you do it, then you're entering a world of, everything you've shared, Anthony. I mean, all those things, that is a possibility for you. And, but on the contrary, I do want to also share that anybody who is in that place or going through that struggle, whatever it may be, Anthony, you're an example of what you can become in terms of where you were. You just shared everything, like the lows of the lows, right? I don't think it can really get worse than that. And you found a way to get out of that and be in a place where you are, where you're incredibly fit, you have hobbies, you have a beautiful family, you have a child that you're raising, your business is doing amazingly well. So kudos to you for all that you've done. And it also kind of gives an opportunity for me, and I'm not sure about Jaden, but for me, definitely, like, just an opportunity to be grateful, right? Of like you said, that being grateful for every breath, and thinking about how lucky you are to be where you are, that you don't have to go through something like that. So yeah,
absolutely, well said.
Yeah, and from there, I just want to say, as we come towards a close, if anyone does have any questions or have anything they want to share, and I know Anthony, he does this work all the time. It's part of what he does. He's motivationally speaking, and he's helping a lot of people get out of drug addiction, so and even other mental health challenges. So if you have thoughts about any of these things, or even initially we talked about residential schools and everything that's happened there, I'm sure he'll be happy to entertain those requests and those thoughts on his Instagram. So you can definitely check him out there.
Yep. Right on.
All right, Jay, do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I think I really appreciated you sharing all of this, and I learned a lot, because like this is like a perspective that I haven't actually really seen that much, and I'm really grateful for it, and it really introduced a lot of new thoughts and ideas into my brain with just how just in general, like how not only how people can be thrown into a bad place, but how you can like progress your life and kind of find your purpose, So I really appreciate you coming on. It was really nice to talk to you and hear your story.
Yeah, no problem. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for watching. This is our Mentor Series episode. And yeah, thank you guys again for the love and support. Keep watching, keep sharing, keep liking, and we'll see you guys on the next one.